You have produced a work. You have copyright, essentially. And copyright is the bundle, the total bundle, which includes the right to make copies, to distribute that work, to make available to the public, broadcast and deal in whatever way you want. So if I understood you well, is you can then assign the right to distribute your work. Is that
yeah, just like maybe to one person and then assign another right to someone else.
To reproduce.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a digitizing agent here. Google, for example. You enter into an arrangement with Google to digitize your book. And you say to Google, your only right is to distribute and not to make available to the public. Your only right is to display and not sell. It becomes quite clumsy, if I may say. And at the end of the day, however, it boils down to the nature of the agreement that you enter into. So you may try to be very smart in the nature of agreement that you enter into with the digitizing agent. Say, what exactly do you want them to do? But when you're dealing with people like Amazon, I guess the moment you authorize them to digitize your work, you are also authorizing them to offer it for sale, to sell it to anybody who wants it from them, and so forth and so on. That's why we say to then isolate particular aspects of the bundle of rights that comprise copyright is difficult. Yes, please.
Maybe to just add on to what you said. First, maybe I'll add on to the issue that you mentioned earlier, to say copyright is owned by the author of the work, irrespective of whether the book is published, whether it's a hard copy or it's a soft copy. As long as a work has been created, copyright is owned. So maybe even if it has not been digitized or it's digitized, if you have created a work, you have the copyright protection. And also to add on to what he's saying in relation to the question that she raises. While theoretically there are these different categories, like the right to offer for sale, the right to display, and everything, you may find that when it comes to practice now, for you to actually subdivide it and say I'm licensing this aspect to this one, it becomes a little bit tricky. So in business, when we sit down and discuss, you may find that now when we are licensing somebody, we cannot say I'm licensing the right to display only, or maybe the right to sell. So you sit down and make sure that the agreement is something that will be workable. At the same time, we also have to be mindful that there are certain aspects which you can also license and leave the whole bundle of the work. Like for instance, the economic rights that we have, you can retain them, but then maybe you can license somebody to make a movie out of your book or something like that. But in terms of saying you can put on digitize my book, but don't make a public display of it, you can present some strictly business things. So essentially, theoretically, yes, you have all these rights which are put together, but in practice, when it comes to dealing with them, you have to consider what is possible and what is not.
Okay. Yes.
There's a question about what constitutes fair use in Zimbabwe.
Right. Fair use, in terms of the Copyright and Neighboring Rights Act of Zimbabwe, it encompasses such things as if you're using a work for criticism, if you're using the work for educational purposes, for research, for news reporting, it's deemed to be fair use. The Copyright and Neighboring Rights Act has a list of things that can be done under the umbrella of fair use, and it includes some of the issues that are mentioned. Yes.
Can I just make a point in that connection? People, when it comes to photographs in Zimbabwe, on the web or in the newspapers, or people use other people's photographs absolutely all the time with no acknowledgement and no permission. I'm just making a comment.
Well, the issue is who owns copyright in that photograph, if we were to go by that example. Because the responsibility to enforce rights in any intellectual property work vests or rests upon the right holder. So if people in the newspaper, where anybody from H Metro, they're very famous for using people's photographs without their consent, especially on the social scene portion of the newspaper. But the whole point I'm making is you have to define who is the author of that photograph, because the author is the owner of the copyright in that. And it is his responsibility to object to the unauthorized use of their work. Right. All right, let me hear.
Okay, in the photographic example that you just used, do I have a right, like as a person, who owns it? Is it the photographer or is it me, the person in the photo?
All right, very quickly, there is a difference between rights in a photograph and image rights. If you were a celebrity, probably you could attach some image rights to a representation of yourself. But the rights in a photograph, they vest in the author of that photograph. And the author of the photograph generally is the person who shot the photograph. So if an H Metro freelancer shoots a picture of yourself in a compromising position or whatever, and they publish it in the H Metro, the copyright in that particular picture vests in the photographer. Because they are the author, they are the one who made that photograph. Your image and rights attaching to your image, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. Yes, I promise you that.
Well, mine's a really potentially very ignorant question, but when you're talking about copyright, whether it's written or photograph or whatever, you don't just automatically have copyright. You have to file for it. I mean, you have to do something official, or it just, I authored this, therefore I automatically have copyright. I mean, you have to prove or document something.
Copyright is automatic.
It just
the moment you create an original work, and you reduce it to a material form, immediately copyright attaches to that particular work.
Okay.
Well, I expect.
Sorry, you want to amplify that before?
I want to ask a question
related to it.
Related
Okay.
to that. Like you're saying that once you do something, you then have copyright. But in Zimbabwe, I actually went to some law firm or something, and I was trying to find out, say if I've given over my book to an editor, but you want to have copyright of your unpublished work. Can I do that? The process in Zimbabwe of doing that, because they were telling me that there is no process until the book